It is 6 o'clock. Welcome to Beaver Politics. I'm here with my trusty sidekick, Frontline Feminists, and we have a lot to talk about tonight. We are going to do a freestyle format. But for the first part of it, I'd like to talk to Frontline a little bit. She got to go see a guest speaker this week, and she got to do some protesting this past week too. So I want to hear from Frontline a little bit. So the first part of it, I'm going to ask everybody to mute their microphones. And Frontline,
If we're only gonna have two people up here though, we should switch the we either want to fill up the boxes
I
or
am going
okay.
to fill up the boxes.
I know, I'm just saying like it's not good to have a lot of empty boxes. So if it's just gonna be me and you in the beginning, then we can change the grid again. So it's just me and you, and then we'll open it up to this grid.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
I'm gonna try to figure out if I can do it from my end.
Hey, Billy Mays. Hey, Happy. How you doing? No, it
Okay,
couldn't have
let's
been
see.
an email. Hey, Damien, how you doing? Hey, Katie, thanks for joining us. Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. Smash those beaver tails and get them out there. PG, how you doing?
There we go. Let me see if I can get my camera going too.
You have had a busy week. Couple weeks, actually.
It's nonstop.
Did you see my cup?
Your cup?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm not. I can't look at it right now because I got to go through these effects. Okay, and
Beautiful
then I got to
cup.
set up my phone. Take my blueberries out of the way.
Blueberries. So good for you.
There we go.
Hey, check this out. I knew you'd appreciate that.
I love that cup. Yeah. Oh, that's
Right?
awesome.
What a week.
Yeah. I just found some stuff out like just an hour ago that is still rattling my mind.
Where do
That's
you
why
want
I
to
was a
start?
little bit late. Right, we can start with this,
Okay.
or maybe we can just drop the big news first and then talk about it later.
Okay. Drop the big news. Drop it.
Cash Cash Patel is now the FBI director.
Is that amazing or what? Amazingly stupid. Holy cow.
This is so bad,
Yeah.
like
I was just
so bad.
watching it.
He's a conspiracy theorist. He is tied to a lot of extremist groups. He vowed to go after anybody that's against the administration. Um, it's going to be weaponized. The FBI is going
Yeah,
to be full on weaponized.
for sure.
So,
It's and Kash Patel and Elon Musk don't get along with each other, do they?
I don't
I've heard a
think
lot
that
of
anybody
whispers about
cares.
that. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that dynamic works together in situations like this.
Yeah, it is beyond dangerous to have him as the head of
Hmm.
the FBI.
Yeah. Oh, who's popping up? Somebody's coming. Hey, James.
I got an invite.
Welcome.
I just got off my live. I had a phone call quick. And then I noticed this when I hopped back on. So, hello.
Hello.
Sorry.
We
I'm
were
trying
we
to
were
plug my
just
phone back in.
That's okay.
We were just
Yeah, we were
talking
just
about Kash Patel.
becoming
Oh,
the FBI director.
that's not scary at all. Isn't he a little bit of? Isn't he the conspiracy theorist?
Yeah,
The one who has an enemies
he's the
list?
guy that told everybody to not get vaccinated. And then he's also the guy that said that the January 6th rioters were actually paid for by the FBI.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Oh, have you heard
Well, I
what
guess the
the?
panel's going to grow.
Oh, did you hear what the press secretary said today?
No, what?
Tell us.
she, when asked about the hockey game, said that they're going to be watching it and cheering for their team as they beat the soon-to-be 51st state, Canada. Literally came out of her mouth as the soon-to-be 51st state at the podium in the fucking White House. Excuse my language.
What are they trying?
I mean, they've been pushing this narrative every single day. Like, they're just going to keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it because they're trying to normalize it. They're trying to get people in Canada to think, well, they've been saying it for so long, I guess it's just going to happen. That's literally one of the things in the Russian playbook. This is exactly what Russia did to Georgia, did to Ukraine. Same thing. Talk about annexation over and over and over and over again. Normalize the people with the fact that it's going to happen.
Yeah, that can't happen. We got to shut that down, and I'm not even sure how we do it anymore.
I think
Things are going to get crazy.
Yeah, really fast. I mean, it is fast. We're a month into it.
He's already taken apart the entire government. I mean, it took Mustache Man 58 days. It took Trump 30.
Well, he's not there yet either entirely where Mustache Man is. So he's still got a little
In my
ways to
eyes,
go.
he is. In
Did
my
he
eyes,
not-
he is. Like, what's there
I
to
would
stop him now?
disagree. I think
Did
that
he not-
Trump is way too incompetent to liken him to Mustache Man right now.
I think
he
so
just-
too.
He's
Did
like,
he
that's
not
my
just say
biggest
the other
hope for
day-
this is that he's going to mess it up somehow because he's like losing his mind. You know what I mean? Like, he can't. I don't believe it. I don't think it's that bad.
Did
don't
he
think
not
it's
just say
that
though that him and his attorney general are the ones that set the laws to ignore the courts? Like, didn't that just happen?
Yep.
Like, he is the arbiter
That
of
did.
the law in the U.S. That's not how that's supposed to work down there.
I think the idea is that Trump is now, like, we keep talking about laws and stuff. I hear people talk about the Constitution. Trump sees himself as the rule of law now. Like, the rule of law doesn't apply in America anymore because Trump is the number one, like, control in that country. So I don't think it really matters what the laws are anymore. They're just kind of doing what they can get away with, and no one's really stopping him. So
Well, I mean, this is literally what went in. He placed an executive order to say that his word is the rule of law now. Like, it doesn't matter what the courts say. It literally
Yep.
does not matter.
Nothing.
They're all subject to him. Everything has to get passed by him. So there is no more rule of law. There is no more constitution. There is no more democracy. It's done. That's why, in my eyes, he did it in 30 days.
okay, I see what you mean.
Okay.
All right. Let's chat a little bit because I know you wanted to ask me about my experience with going to see Adam Kinzinger and also
Yeah,
my
I
experience
wanna
with the
hear about
protest that I
that.
went to.
Yeah, I want to
And then
hear
we'll
about
open
that.
it up for more discussion. So, let me start off by saying that, like, in the beginning, I think he actually probably, hold on, I'm going to fill up this panel because it's just good for
Yeah.
it's just good for us to have the people on here. So give me 1 second while I do this so I can concentrate on chatting. I'm just going one by one in order.
People like Trump in power.
Do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to put a gifting goal.
America's officially not a
I think you
democracy.
still can. What's up, James?
It's
It
not.
hasn't been for a while, but this is
You know what the
Very
funny thing is like, I never thought I'd hear anybody say it's not that bad. I really
So
didn't think
I
that,
missed this. He
you know,
literally said, or he signed an executive order saying his rule is law.
Yeah.
I said that he's not. I said Trump is less
It's
competent
done.
than Mustache Man. I don't think he's
That's
competent.
inarguably a dictatorship.
It is though, yeah.
yeah, like I think,
All right.
I think Mustache Man had like
Okay, so we're going to mute
some
our
kind of
mics.
idea.
We're going to mute our mics.
We're just going to
for a
mute
few
our
minutes.
mics.
Oh, are we going on to show?
No, yeah, we're going on to the show. So I welcome Beaver Politics, but I'll do it again. Welcome Beaver Politics. And Frontline's going to talk to us about a speech that she had the opportunity to go see with Adam Kinzinger. Is that right?
Yeah.
And he was a senator with the Republican Party, right? in the
Yes.
United States, and he swung pretty much the other way. Like he had total distaste by the time the insurrection hit, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he was part of the January 6th committee to go
Yeah,
against Trump.
yeah. So how did that talk go? What did the beginning look like?
So the beginning was like way too positive. And this was now, what, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago already?
Yeah.
So, so much has already happened since he spoke on stage, right?
Hmm.
And I think he might have even pissed off a couple of Canadians because he was like overly positive that like Americans are going to figure their way out through this. Things are going to be okay. At the end of the day, Americans are good people. And like most of them are. We know that. Like
Do you think it
we're
was
not sitting
just
here.
him trying to get a hopeful message out?
Yes. Yes. So the first half was like him just speaking, right? Which was, again, hopeful messaging, wanting to sound positive. And then the next half was all questions. And the questions that he got asked were tough questions. And there were some questions that he didn't even have an answer to. But the first half, I took notes, so I'm going to tell you guys what I
Excellent.
took in my notes. The speech was called "What It Means to Be American," and the subheading was "Navigating Identity in a Changing Nation." So, of course, he talked about the fact that like democracy is the hardest form of government there is. We know that, right? It's obviously much harder to have a government by the people than a government by a small, tiny little group of oligarchs or military control or whatever, right? So he says that, people have a social contract, and that's kind of what went wrong. And what's going wrong in the world is that to have a democracy work properly, people need to be involved in politics. And one of the biggest issues that we're facing, and we know as Canadians, as Americans, people all over Europe now, people have become so drawn into their, I don't know, cat videos or their friends or their margarita parties or whatever it is. They've gotten so comfortable in a democracy that they don't realize what a democracy and sorry, Grandma Sandy, I am going to mute you because I can hear. There we go. Sorry, guys, I could hear some clinking in the background. But yeah, talking about the fact that people have gotten so comfortable in a democracy, they don't realize that in order for a democracy to work, you have to be active. You have to go vote. You have to say your piece. You have to contact your representatives. You have to actually participate. And he broke down participation into education, community awareness. So again, we haven't, especially in the States, like their education around government and politics is real bad. Community, right? This whole individualistic mindset that America has supported for so long took people away from community. So that's another problem. It's easier to manipulate people that are not in community together. And then awareness, which we know is like the number one biggest problem that we're all working on right now, is creating awareness around what's going on so that people feel motivated to actually go out and vote and to understand what they're voting for, right?
Right, right.
And then he talked about like, why does democracy matter? Well, it matters because it's the only form of government that can actually give individual freedom to reach your potential and to choose your own identity. Basically, he said people who are willing to put everything on the line for a future that is more free, more prosperous, and more united in peace. People need to be willing to put everything on the line for a future that's more free, more prosperous, and more united in peace for future generations. He then talked about obviously what's going on right now. He said that Donald Trump does not care about America, only about himself. He lies, he steals, and he uses people. The people have to stand up and do what leadership should do, but won't now. And people need to look at history. People need to understand that their history. And he really drilled that in, right? That if we don't know history, then history repeats itself. And unfortunately, we're seeing that right now.
So did he have any ideas when he was talking about like things people need to do besides know their history?
Not really. That's the thing. It was, he just said things like, we don't have a right to give up. We don't have a right to be tired. Like people need to speak up in the sense of like, everything we've already heard. Go out and protest, call your representatives, create communities, right? He was really big on like creating your communities, talking to your communities, making sure that you're educating people. But outside of that, he was like, there's really nothing else that people can do. That's kind of the scary part, is like, there's not really that much more that the people can do on a level that's calm and collected, to put it nicely, if you guys catch where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but then this is where people started asking questions about Canada, right? Because he was doing a speech in Canada at a university in Canada. So a lot of the questions were, what's going on up here? What's going on with this annexation talk? He told us that we need to take it seriously. And he did tell us that we need to be concerned about our conservatives. And this is coming from a Republican who used to be Republican, right? He basically said that what's happening right now with the conservative parties of the world is that they're not true conservatives anymore. They are extreme right-wing, basically cultists. And he called them a cancer. And he said that if you have cancer in your body, you have to get rid of it. And that is what democracies right now need to do around the world. They need to look at these extreme right conservative parties as a cancer, and they need to go do chemotherapy. He said that if you don't control the extremists, they're only going to multiply. And you cannot make room for them. You cannot make room for extremists, nationalists, and liars, because they will infect every party that they're in and ruin it. And so basically what he's saying is like, these people have come in over the last 10 to 15 years into these conservative parties and changed them and ruined them. So we need to be
100%.
very aware of that. He said that Republican Party is not conservative anymore. They just call themselves that, but they're not. They've become the party of extremism. And then he gave a message to the Democratic Party, which is, he said it was going to apply to us and our Liberal or our NDP party as well, is that, and this might be, again, controversial, but I didn't say it. You guys can take it as you will. He said you have to create a big tent in order to invite in lots of people, even if they don't agree on everything. And
Right.
that is a big problem, right? That it unfortunately is a big problem on the left. There's a lot of people that have certain values that they hold on to so dearly, so dearly, that it's really hard for them to make room for others. And that is how a lot of the parties on the left sometimes don't do as well. So he said, you guys really need to focus on building a big tent and figuring out a way that tent is going to support everybody, and figure out a way to say, hey, we might disagree on this issue and this issue, but we agree on everything else. So we should stick together and work together. Right? When talking about Ukraine, he said that Canada and the EU need to help Ukraine. Because if we don't, we're in for a lot of problems. He basically said what's going to happen is like, if nobody helps Ukraine and say Ukraine just gives up their land and says that the war is over, Russia's going to take a 1 to 2 year break to like get all their resources back.
Yeah.
And get ready again. And then they're going to come after the rest of Europe, especially Eastern Europe, obviously first. So he's like, if they don't lose now, they're coming back.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a lot worse. So people need to be very aware of that. And then he did say that because people were saying like, we're scared of protesting. And somebody asked him like, is the military force going to be used against protesters? And he just looked down at the ground and shook his head and said, I don't know. I don't know. He's like, but they might.
And we saw that with the Black Lives Matter protests, right? We saw that in the United States. We saw them take weapons. We saw them use them against citizens. We saw them use pepper spray against citizens when they were protesting, and they used it as an opportunity to stand with the Bible upside down.
Yeah. And he said that basically, if things go really, really bad, he's moving to Canada because he's a target down there. He's no, like seriously,
No, I
he
know.
is a
And it
target, right?
just
Because he
seems
was
like,
part of the January 6th committee.
yeah.
So he's probably going to move up here, especially now that Kash Patel is in as FBI director. I can guarantee you he's moving up here with his whole family because I don't see a good future for that guy right now, especially because he's speaking out against Trump. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and then the only other thing that I wanted to throw in here, because he did talk about it for quite a bit, and I think it's really important for all of us to understand this, is the radicalization of young men and how much that's happening under our noses and us not realizing it. He's like, we got here because of what's happening on social media with the radicalization of young guys. Basically, like, it's so easy for them to get pulled down these rabbit holes. And he's like, it leads back to like playing video games.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. Like, it's not the video games' fault. It's the people that are using these games to bring them into Telegram groups and Discord servers where they start dropping like slight racial slurs from here and there and say, oh, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. And then over time, they start introducing them to more and more and more radical ways of being. They start introducing them to people like, Joe Rogan, who's actually kind of mild in comparison to some of the other stuff online, but they start with that and then they just get more and more and more radicalized. So the conservative parties of the world have been building up these like teams of young men who are going to be sympathizers to their cause. And it's very scary because a lot of parents have no clue that it's happening. And by the time that they find out, it's too late. So that's
Wow.
something that we need to figure out a way to deal with. So he said, like, this is a message to the parents. Start really paying attention to what your kid's doing online, because a lot of the times, especially in games, they have their headphones on and then the parents don't know what's going on. So, really important message for parents. Check in with your kids. Make sure that they are not being targeted by these right-wing groups. And it happens to women too. Like, I don't want people saying like, "Oh, you're
Yeah.
just pointing at men." Like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm a gamer girl myself, and I know how easily like I could have been pulled into something like that when I was younger, right? So it's not just men. I'm just generalizing because when we look at statistics, it is usually the guys that get pulled into this more often. But there's definitely lots of women and girls that get pulled down these rabbit holes as well. So I just wanted to put
Yeah.
that out there. It's not a it has nothing to do with like just the men. I'm just talking from a statistical standpoint that it does end up attracting them a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the talk with Adam.
Wow. That's a lot to touch on.
I think
Lots.
I think when I hear you say that, I didn't hear his speech personally, but when I hear you say that, it draws me back, and I think Happy can agree with me. We've been in a lot of lives together, and all of those things are things that we have been saying for years, and I can't stress enough how much we've talked about the radicalization and all of the signs and everything that is happening and where it's going and the buildup, right? All the gerrymandering over decades has been building up specifically for these moments. We need to find a way to get the message out, because democracy is so much harder to get back than it is to retain.
Absolutely agree.
If you have it, find a way to hold on. And if you don't have it, it's fucking hard to get it.
When the floodgates open, right, and you see that insurgency trying to like pick away at the foundations of your freedoms, it's kind of like the straw on the camel's back, and once that camel's back breaks, or once the floodgates are open, like, think about how you're going to achieve what you want. I kind of have like maybe a different perspective on our solution or resolution, whatever. And I don't think it really has anything to do with those people. I think We have people on both sides who are extremes, and extreme is a bad word, who are quite polarizing, and you know, can't spend time trying to convince them that they're wrong. We need to convince the people who didn't show up the last time that it's important to vote. And I think we start by again, interacting in those spaces, and illustrating how human we are, and how relatable our day-to-day life is with a lot of people, not necessarily with the people in the panel, right? It's difficult. It's not necessarily with the people in the panel, but the people
Sorry, I
watching.
can't hear you. Someone else is talking.
Pixie, you've got an echo.
So, like, it's not about who you're sitting with and who you're debating or who you're arguing or having conversations with. It's about the people watching, and it's about, like, when they talk about you, well, actually he's not that bad. I don't know what to say. He's not that bad, right? And then you're like, okay, now we're human again, and we can start to navigate that conversation.
I want to add to that,
100%.
if you don't mind, and then I'll be quiet for a bit. And then, so one of the things, like, to echo what you're saying, is everybody in here, and I've said this a lot, everybody in here knows it. What we need to do is get the message out. If you look at all of these kind of events throughout history, right, a select few have been pulling those strings, and the peaceful majority has been irrelevant in all of those events, at each and every one of them. I challenge you to find me one of these horrific events where the peaceful majority was not irrelevant, right? I would challenge you to find me that for me. But we absolutely need the message to be out.
I like to agree with what Happy said about avoiding the extremes. I think we should focus on the people who don't vote and maybe are dismayed and need some encouragement, connection, and community rather than trying to argue with people who are just, they don't. Uh, it's annoying when you're arguing like logic versus illogical or fact versus non-fact, and I can't have those conversations anymore and assume that everyone just doesn't have the right information. So I'm saving my energy for those who are just wanting to live, norm people who just want to live their lives and who are scared of what's going on and want like a practical solution.
And take time to have those conversations with people and not necessarily always talk politics when you know you don't agree. Take moments to enjoy each other. I have somebody that we are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and I know that we're not going to have a come to Jesus moment soon. But I know that we went to the office Christmas party together. We played some games together. I'm looking for things I like about this person so that, for example, a week ago she ran in the office and she was like, Mrs. Radical, did you hear about this? And I said, why are you asking me this? And she said, because you know things. So she may not agree with every single thing I'm saying, but she's open to, and I think it's because we've had some fun little experiences together that she's just a little bit open. And maybe we're
She's
going to have a
trusting
couple
of
more
you.
experiences and it's going to be a little bit more.
I think she's trusting you because you've built a rapport with her.
It's going to take time, but I think not every relationship and every connection is going to be like that. But when we talk about men, one of the biggest things I thought is men can go out there, and if you have the time and you have the ability, we can be applying to big brothers and big sisters and getting security clearances and going through the programming and going and working with young youth. Going into our community centers and seeing, are there programs for young men out there looking for young people, because I know they're there. Go ahead, Happy.
Yeah, there's absolutely. Again, I think that's actually going to be the catalyst to moving forward, is trying to get people engaged through community activities. I brought this up before. When I was younger, there used to be, like, the rec center is still here, but you would rent it out. As an adult, you would go in, you would rent it out, and you would sit there and supervise, right? and two or three adults would come in, the parents of other kids would come in, and you just let the kids play. There would be a gym, and you could just hang out, and so you're kind of like, ingratiating yourself with your neighborhood. You're not talking politics. It's the quickest way to end a conversation is to bring up politics, money, or religion, right? Like, so if we keep it to the basics and just talk about, there's so much overlap with what affects our lives, right? Like,
Yeah,
May I say
thanks.
something?
Absolutely.
I'm agreeing wholeheartedly with what everybody is saying. But I believe there is a tide, it's turning. Because I'm just in a small community with friends for 40 years. A particular friend just recently, who's been a diehard Trump and conservative for like his whole life, has finally changed his mind. He doesn't think that's the right course to go anymore. Now, this is a 64-year-old man who finally admitted not the right place to be right now.
Did he
And
say like what it was that changed his mind?
well, we would converse. We have what we call happy hour, and it would occur 3 to 4 times a week at each person's home because we all grew old together. So anyway, we've had political discussions for years and years. This time, with me just going, okay, that's your opinion. Just research what I said. Just find out if it's true or not. And not arguing, he actually took the time to research what I said and came to the same conclusion I had. And that was wonderful. But it took not arguing, just whenever he came out with something that I knew was not true, I would just say, you know what? Just research it. And he would. So I found gentle conversation a lot more effective.
I love that. I mean, it's not going to work for every person we come across. I think Pixie Lee can speak to that passionately. Not everybody's open to that sensible conversation, but if you can have it, you should take those moments. They're really important. That's that community building part.
Exactly, the community building. And that one person who I may have changed his mind may change 5 other people's minds. And
Yeah.
those people and those people. Frontline feminist, I loved what you said. I totally agree. My real concern as according to the government, elderly person, I truly believe we know a lot about history. Because back in the day, we learned real history, not the stuff they're only allowing us to hear now. Not what we learned from our parents and grandparents who actually went through the war.
That's why I know everything I know about like World War II is because my mom, who is like a bit older than you, she taught us that. She taught us it was very important to her because her father went through it.
Exactly. And thank you for that. Because we grew up, personally me, I grew up at, 15 years into the end of the war. But they were still struggling. They were still trying to come up with ideas. It was still a real fear of other countries. And we grew up with that. As a matter of fact, when Canada played Russia in hockey, we all had the day off to watch the game.
I love that. I remember that.
Can you believe
I
that?
remember that actually.
Do
I
you
do.
remember
I
that?
do. I'm that old.
We either watched it in school or we watched it at
I
home.
do.
It was that
We
important.
had it on in the cafeteria.
And thank goodness Canada won.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Because I don't know what would have happened if we had lost. That was the fear that I grew up with. So now I'm saying, with everything I'm watching globally, everything I'm watching online, all the research I'm doing, I am really concerned for the next chapter of 5 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are concerned.
That's
Although I had great hope today because I looked it up on the ticker today and they said that the Canadian military, we'd been talking in our house about a possible draft and just what things look like. And the Canadian military said that people have been signing up and they're doing well. They are not at the same place they were a year
right.
ago. And that's that place of finding community, taking care of each other, and that passionate, patriotic feeling. Pixie Lee, did you want to add?
Looking to see what time the hockey game started and if it's on my other phone because we have a hockey.
Right now, actually,
It's on right now. It's on right now.
Okay, well, I'm trying to find it. What's the score?
Anybody else want to add to that?
I was just able to tune in now. I don't know. I'm gonna figure it out in a sec.
I'm trying.
Oh, we've lost him.
As soon as you said the hockey, I'm like,
We're 1-0 right now. We're 1-0. Us 1, US 0. For now. I'm not going to get too excited yet.
I know.
According to Justin, that means we're binary.
I'd be binary too.
Yeah, he did invite Governor Trudeau to the hockey game. It's true.
Right? No, I just wanted to actually point out today also is the 3rd anniversary of the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. And I wanted to point out that me and Mrs. Radical started our Shelter for the Ukraine 3 years ago today. And that's why I put this because I'm giving these away because I found a bunch of these in my drawer. So we had gotten one of the local sidekick stickers here in town made these for us as a fundraiser. We sold them for $2 a piece and we actually made some money off them. But we were literally pinched 30,000 Lorenike to bring
We did.
over. And I actually was so funny because I went and seen Helena right on my birthday. I ran into Lana yesterday when I went to go to Staples. So it was weird because everything's just kind of like they were just there, right? So I was seeing all of them in the last couple of days.
Did you tell them about Beaver politics?
No, I did not. I didn't have time.
Tell them to come see you in Beaver politics. And how many families did we bring in? How many people did we bring in to Canada?
The first round we brought in 9 because that was Pavlenko 6 and then Larissa and her 2 boys. Larissa went back to the Ukraine.
That's right.
And took the boys and then was there for 4 months and then realized it really sucked and came back and brought her sister Tamara with her.
And we brought a kitty.
We brought 2 kitties.
Two kitties. There we go.
We brought a family over that had 2 boys and 2 cats. So I think in total we brought 90 people over. Until that, I think there's 2 more families brought over after we left, and so I think a total of about 112. But I wanted to mention that because I don't know how long because I'm at work, right? I'm gonna have to scoot back and forth, but I just wanted to say thank you to you again for all the support and stuff that the 2 of us do together in our small little community. Mrs. Radical's a real asset to our community too. Just saying.
Thank you.
Okay.
We love you too. Thank you.
Yeah, but let's go boys, hockey.
So, do you guys know the different Enough is Enough groups that are in Alberta?
What is that? I have no clue. Tell me about it.
There's some groups that have gotten together and they've formed in like Calgary, Edmonton, and some of the rural areas here, trying to stand up to our government right now and all the things that they've been doing. And they have actual they have actual dates in their group of the different gatherings that people were asked to come out to kind of, depending on the subject matter, there's different reasons for each one of the dates. And you have to forgive me, I don't have a good memory, but
Pepperton,
they're
if
all
you want to make a video, I can put it up on Beaver Politics page if you want kind of to put some dates together and I can put a video up.
yeah, because to be honest with you, we haven't had Calgary's had some really good turnouts. Edmonton hasn't. And the one thing they do is like they're doing one for trans, they're doing one for DEI, they're doing one for age people and everybody, and then of course the ones that are specific to stand up for all the things that are going on that the government's been doing that are not above board, and like there's all different categories that they're holding these rallies for. So it would be awesome if we could try and help them build their followers for that and try and get more people out, because I think it would help us here in Alberta. We have lots of issues with right wingers here in this province too, and it's and with what's going on with Danielle Smith and everything, it's starting to worry me immensely, because the corruption that's going on in that government is phenomenal, and
I'm just
she's got
gonna
herself so well covered that I don't know if we're
quickly
going to
to
be
the
able to
top of your
pull her out.
list. My parents,
Pardon me?
my dad was in the hospital in Alberta last year for a period of time. First
Yep.
time ever, my parents got a bill for $3,000 from AHS for his hospital stay.
What?
Yeah.
Why? What for what?
That's it. Exactly, for his hospital stay. Because it's now not Alberta healthcare the way we used to remember it. $3,000. And my parents are in their 80s, they're seniors. My mother was a
Yeah.
public servant for decades. So there you go. You can add that to Danielle Smith's, war crimes.
My
Yeah,
wife
she's
got
the. Sorry.
no need. It's up to you. You can go.
Well, I was just going to say they're not from Alberta, though.
Are they out of province?
No, they've lived in Alberta since 1981.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's what's creepy, and then finding out
RCMP
about.
for 30 years. RCMP for 30 years, and
Yeah.
lived in Alberta since 81. No.
Well,
That's messed
they've
up.
uncovered.
In Ontario, my wife, we've been bounced whatever. So she had to spend the weekend in the hospital a couple weeks ago. It cost us no money, right? Still, it cost us $0. It might have cost us a couple bucks for a room upgrade for a single room, but
Yeah.
I don't think it did.
Well, that shouldn't be happening here. That's the first I've heard of that, but that's something that should be publicized.
Yeah,
That's
it's
something that I would bring to the attention of the news media, because she's been underhandedly setting up privatized clinics in Alberta, Edmonton specifically, for orthopedic surgeries, and they just kind of broke
You know
a
who they
whole
go
bunch
after
of.
first? They go after the seniors, because the seniors, especially where I'm from, they a lot of the time have a healthcare package, a private healthcare package already from their previous job that carries over into retirement. Like my mother's covered. And
Also, the majority of your healthcare costs are in the last 6 months of your life. So the
Yeah.
most profit to be had would be in the last 6 months of life, especially because Canada healthcare has this concept called morbidity compression, which
Yeah.
is where you push disabilities as far to the end of life as possible. So you're gonna have that's why it costs so much at the end of life. So it's
Yeah.
kind of scary, and I'm glad you mentioned that they're going after the old folks, because holy moly.
oh yeah, absolutely, they're going to be going after the seniors because of they have that private healthcare already established, so nobody's going to notice. The transition would be
Well,
smooth,
here's
right?
the thing too. You can
They're also
get
just vulnerable, right?
for any surgery in Canada that you want, because people are saying that because in the states Medicare and with Obamacare and Medicare and the private insurance companies, the states don't have it so as bad as they used to anymore, because they're covered by insurance companies with no or low copays, right? So at some aspects, sometimes their healthcare will appear to be better than ours because our wait times are so long, because they stole half our nursing and doctor staff back in the 90s.
It's not just that
Are you
though.
talking?
The
Wait
problem.
times where?
Yeah, The
Are
problem
those
in
actually high? Because
Alberta,
I hear that rhetoric a lot, but I haven't waited ever for a long time in BC. So is that
Me
just like a
neither.
provincial? Maybe it's a different in
It's
your
actually,
province.
like, I'm in British Columbia too, and it's not that bad here, to be fair.
well,
I have to disagree on some points, okay? Because I'm talking from living experience. I had a spiral fracture last March, okay? Where I broke the tibia, the fibia, and smashed a bunch of bones. I had a major surgery. I was not eligible in Ontario for physio treatment
that's
until
different.
I was 65 years old.
It's
And
not
I'm
very
living
hard.
it right now.
It's not very
So,
hard to come
Let's
in.
because
not
they
talk
took
on
so
top of each
long,
other.
sorry,
Go ahead and finish your sentence.
because they took so long in giving me physio, because they waited till I was 65, and that's Ontario, my leg, I'm never going to walk without a medical aid.
And that's on the provinces.
I broke it Good Friday, March last year.
And that's those conservative run provinces are weaponizing healthcare
That's
against
right.
the
I
individuals.
received a phone call right from the Ministry of Health because my doctor put an appeal in saying that this wasn't right. And they called me personally and said, no, the Ontario government is not covering it for anybody under the age of 65. So I've lived it. I'm telling you the truth.
Okay, I believe you. Can we head up to Pixie now? Pixie Lee, go ahead.
I'm not disputing any of that, and I understand where you're coming from because physiotherapy is not covered in any province unless you have extended benefits, or
That's
you're on an
correct.
SPP, or you're on anything. So physiotherapy for me wouldn't be covered in British Columbia unless I had extended benefits through my job or my husband's job, right? Same with massage therapy, acupuncture, all of these things. Eye care, eye coverage, all that stuff is not covered by any provincial government, any Canadian federal government for medical of any kind,
Oh,
unless you
shit.
have private health insurance with your job. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but in Alberta, my parents were given Blue Cross, right, as extended benefits once they turned 65. But again, like I said, until you are 65, unless you're on some form of social assistance or disability, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
might be why I have it, and why I have the impression that it's covered.
Well, yeah,
It
exactly.
is covered with seniors. They have coverage that comes with it, and AISH also because I used to be on AISH as well.
But AISH is also not covering some medical anymore either. Prescriptions, I think, are $2. They were $2 a piece. Even for my daughter with her Suboxone, it's not free with AISH anymore either.
Well, that's because they moved them over to Blue Cross from what they used to be.
Right.
They just changed it. Now it's because Danielle Smith got that done.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. And then what she's doing is going to break down that program even more and kick more people off. My daughter's got a head injury, but she's also got a drug addiction problem, which is a disease, and that's why she's on AISH. But she's also, they've got stipulations that they're changing all of that right now. Now in British Columbia, I'm a disabled person. I've got rheumatoid arthritis, attention deficit, and I can't get PWD. Why? Because I'm married. So in British Columbia, they make it so that you cannot get any disability if you're married. So you're then under your spouse's thumb and are financially, not that you're financially abused, but it's financial abuse as far as I'm concerned. You should be able to support yourself no matter whether you're married or not.
It's discrimination.
It's a remnant.
UBI.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But Ontario just phased a lot of this stuff out last year. Before that, we had the coverage.
Conservatives. And that's what I think everybody in Canada wants to complain about the federal government. The federal government's not doing these things. It's your
It's
provincial.
the provincial governments.
Right? It's your conservative. So, and it's in British Columbia we have an NDP government that's running more central than they do NDP. To be fair, because they do a lot of oil and gas and LNG and stuff that would normally not be considered something along the lines of an NDP government.
Yeah, it's standard, not NDP, but they do it because Alberta's done that.
Right.
You basically
I
shift
agree
the party
100%
one
that it's
place to the
federal.
right.
I didn't mean to give the impression it wasn't federal.
So the thing that with the NDP and Alberta is you have to come up with a solution for everyone. and they
Nolte wasn't
understand
running
that
out, but
that
Nolte wasn't
business is
running
going to
Alberta like an
go.
NDP either. Nolte's
They're
more
going to go
central.
anyways.
Sorry, I can't hear what Happy's saying. Can we
Oil
just...
and gas is going to go anyways. They're going to do it. So, like,
It
the
won't.
NDP's position is, if they're going to do it, we need to make sure it's done right. And
Yeah.
and that's they have to concede something, and that's where that whole Alberta thing is different than the rest of the province. I just think that it's a heck of a job to try and keep up in Alberta
You got to
as
balance the
No,
two
yeah.
different worlds.
conservative. So you have to take what you can get, in my opinion. Not to take away from.
Yeah. Do you know when Rachel Notley was in office here, she actually worked with the oil and gas. They accused her of not doing it, but she did. And if she's completely different than, say, Jagmeet federally, because she's not a leftist, she's a centrist. She worked on both sides of the table. And the whole idea of it was the fossil fuels is going to run out, and they know it. So they were trying to start planning for the future. Let's diversify. Let's find an alternative industry that Alberta can use to take up the, like to help the people that will be out of work when that does happen. And let's start working towards it now. You don't want to wait till the last minute. You want to plan for these things. And that's what she was trying to do. Yeah, she made a couple of mistakes with the farmers and pissed them off, and for that reason, they decided not to vote for her again. But I'll tell you what, this next election that comes up, it's going to be NDP in Alberta. And I
hope
looked it
so.
up, and all 7 of the conservative governments in Canada all have shitty health care. They've all trashed their health care system.
I
trying
sure
to
hope
make
you're
it
right.
privatized.
Is
I'm
Nenshi the
going to
leader?
take a moment. Sorry, Happy? Finish that thought and Are you sure? Okay.
Is he the leader? Sorry, this is all I asked.
Pardon
Who
me?
the leader is in Alberta? Jagmeet is the federal representative for
Provincial.
Canada.
Isn't
it-
he?
Who's
Who's the NDP Alberta
first
leader?
name, but his
Nenshi
last name
is
is
for
Nenshi.
Alberta.
Yeah,
Right.
Nenshi is Alberta. He's the one
Nenshi's
that's running
Alberta.
as the leader of the NDP right now.
And he
Yeah.
was
Formerly-
the mayor of Calgary or
Calgary
Edmonton?
for
Yeah.
4 years or something.
Calgary, yeah. He was a
Yeah.
good mayor too. He had his flaws, but to be fair, I think in the whole, we'd beg for him back. But I'm gonna take this opportunity to give a shameless plug for Beaver Politics. Thank you all for joining us again. We have shows 7 nights a week now, and we'd love you guys to tune in. We're all starting them at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So come in and see us. We have a little bit of everything. Tomorrow night, we have Nerdy, and she's doing Polytalk, sorry, and it's a debate that runs for quite a while. So bring your coffee, get a drink, bring a sandwich, and be prepared for some rousing conversation. We've got Polychick tomorrow afternoon, and she's going to be talking about history with a purple crayon. And I love those conversations. And then we hit Saturday, and we've got Jenna, who's talking about mental health, something that's really important that we all need in Canada right now, in breaking the dam. And we've got Radical on Saturday night and Radicalized. And then I'm really excited. I'll take this moment to introduce Happy. He's going to be on our show talking about moments of happiness. Do you want to speak on it, Happy?
Just briefly, what I wanted to do was explore and kind of take a deeper perspective on how people are defining happiness and how that relates to, how they've lived their life in hindsight, where they are now, where they thought they would be, and whether or not, they would respect where they are now as a child.
It almost sounds like a bit of a social experiment. Those are my favorite kind. Thanks, Happy.
Should be really fun.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, so we're growing and building our dam up. So thank you for showing up. Tapping is clapping, sharing is caring. We appreciate your gifts. We're using your gifts to build that beaver dam a little bit larger and create community. So thank you. The second part of the show, I think Frontline will be excited to discuss. What do you think about Trump's comments yesterday towards Zelensky,
He's an asshole.
big time.
I mean, it's unfortunately a lot more than just that, you know. Here, I'll put my camera back on. I do want to say one thing real quick before we kind of jump into that conversation that still has to do with Ukraine. And I'm not, I don't know who said it. I've just been hearing, because we're talking so much about it. A lot of people still say the Ukraine. No bueno. That actually is disrespectful of their sovereignty. And it's something that's been in our language for a long time. But we should just call Ukraine, Ukraine, rather than saying the Ukraine. That's just a big thing that I want.
Do you know why we say the Ukraine, or why we used to, or like what's like? Because when now you say it, it comes across as really strange. We don't say anything. We don't use that for anyone else.
Yeah.
No, I don't use. I've never called it the Ukraine. I think that's coming from the French people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also like old, you know, when you talk about the USSR, or when you talk about the People's Republic of, or you know, there's different places like that. So I think maybe it was adopted like that at some point in history. I'm not sure, but I'll still respect the, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good note. Thanks, Frontline.
I just, I know, because I used to hear it a lot, especially when I started reporting what was going on.
Look what's sparkling in China. So that's
So
probably
what do you-
that's probably why it's offensive, to be fair.
What do you think? What do you think about the conversation?
I mean, it's just showing us that the alliances of the world are changing, and it's really concerning. Obviously, it's very obvious. Trump is siding with Putin here. Russia has very little resources left to fight this war. They can probably keep going for another 5 to 6 months, but this is Trump this is Trump helping them out to try to get a win by saying that they're going to pull help out, and at the same time, there's so much talk. Like, I don't even think that the administration is actually keeping up with everything that's going on. But like, they asked Ukraine for their resources. They said they wanted 50% of their rare earth minerals.
Not buy them off of them, but steal them from him.
It would cede the territory.
Yeah.
Like, wait,
Crimea, give up Crimea.
How is that? Wait. What was actually said? They just, was that like a negotiation? Like, you give us your minerals, and like it's just like you.
No,
give us
what was said is that you owe us for the 2.5 years of us helping you. You now owe us 50% of your rare earth minerals, and we want you to buy from us.
So Biden gave him all of this support, right, with zero strings attached. Trump now is calling those debts in.
You know
But it's,
what?
okay, but I want
There's no business being involved in these conversations to begin with. They shouldn't even be involved in these conversations to begin with. It's not their, I don't care what they've done to help them. That is the NATO way, and this is the way the world should be working towards a peaceful ending. But the United States have no business in this period.
They're wanting to get out of NATO.
I'm going to get us to start muting our microphones because we're going to start talking on top of each other, and I haven't let Frontline finish that piece. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's not about the fact that there wasn't no strings attached. It's about actually giving respect to the Budapest Memorandum. It was written, it was already agreed to that if Ukraine gives up its nuclear weapons, they will get help if they're ever invaded. So it's not, I don't want to hear like, oh, US just gave all this help with no strings. No, they were actually honoring an agreement. They were honoring an agreement. And no agreement.
Sorry, I just, when I heard the other day, Russia was part of that agreement too, wasn't he? Weren't they?
Yep. Russia violated the agreement when they annexed Crimea in 2014.
Exactly.
So the United States helped because they were also part of that agreement.
When it really wasn't.
No. So there's a lot of lying going on right now because Trump is trying to rally up his supporter base in America to think negatively of Ukraine. like him saying that Zelensky only has a 4% approval rating, which is absolute BS. It's over 50%, higher than Trump's approval rating.
Sure.
Just wanted to point that out for everybody to understand
Probably
that.
higher than Putin's.
They're spreading, and then Elon Musk is spreading a bunch of lies right now about Zelensky, saying that the United States paid celebrities to go down there and meet with him and take pictures just so that he can look appealing to Americans. Total and utter lie. They're trying to say now that he...
Started the
Gosh,
war.
I don't know if I can say this word on... Sorry?
Accusing him
Somebody
of
said
starting
something?
the war. He came out and said that either yesterday or today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah,
he called
that's what
him
we were
a
talking about. So,
dictator too.
yeah, he called him a dictator because they're not having elections, because basically Ukraine is up for an election cycle right
Yeah.
now. But no shit, they can't
How
have
can they have an
elections. They're in the
election?
middle of a war. They're fighting for survival. And again, this is where people need to understand history. Winston Churchill did not have an election for 6 years straight during the Second World War. Why? Because they were at war. And Americans are just buying this stuff up and believing it. And there's going to be so much more propaganda. Like, you know, I've been around for this propaganda for a long time, but now it's going to get a lot worse, like even more than it was, because the MAGA base was already brainwashed to think that Ukraine was being used as a political tool by America to somehow make them money.
That whole thing with Biden, right? With Hunter Biden, and then Trump turning around and wanting the laptop and all this stuff was all connected to some business dealings in Ukraine, which pushed the Russians to invade. Now Trump's turning around and trying to blame all that on the previous as well, right? But let's
Yeah.
be fair. The coup started because they already had a puppet government in there in 2014, and he was overtaken because they shot 150 protesters. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't go back. Like, if you go back and you talk to Ukrainian people, they will tell you this was not a coup. They were protesting because this guy was a puppet for the Russian government.
It was Yankovic. So that's what happened, and this is kind of how I want to tie things in a little bit to Canada here as well. So Yankovic was a Putin puppet that was placed in Ukrainian's government after they had some really good leaders that were again pushed out by Russia, and I mean like horribly, horribly treated. I'm not even going to get into the details of like what happened to the woman that was in power before Yankovic, but when Yankovic was finally pushed out of power and he ran back to Daddy Putin, the Ukrainians basically celebrated their ability to try and create a democracy again. And that pissed off Russia. So they invaded Crimea in 2014. That's what happened. The Putin puppet got out because he was pushed out by the people, and then they invaded. So this is what Russia does. Russia will not go in with military force if they have a puppet there, because that puppet will do what? They'll give Russia access to resources. What's Trump doing to us right now? Why do they endorse the Conservative Party? Why are they cozying up to all of our conservative premiers? Because
Resources.
he doesn't have to annex us if the conservative puppets in Canada will just sell him those resources and make business deals.
I want to point out that
I just want to.
another reason is that conservatives are unified across the world in their mission to get this white Christian nationalism everywhere. So that's when when people say, "Oh, you know, like in BC last election, people were saying, "Oh, I don't want Trudeau, so I'm going to vote conservative for the provincial election," right? People were like, "Oh, you guys are so dumb, you don't know blah blah blah." I think they just don't care. I think that as long as they see conservative, it's their flag, and that's what they go for. It doesn't matter if it's provincial or federal; they just are a big one unified force. And that's why, I guess, to reinforce what you guys have all said, we need to get that unity going on our side, because they are very unified across the world, like extremely, like way more than we are. And that's
Yeah, very much so. I want to chime in here though about the Russia thing. And I've been pointing it out for quite a while now. The meeting between Trump and Putler in Helsinki was the pivotal moment of about the last 7 or 8 years. That's where this plan was hatched up, because I'm pretty sure Putler went, I will back you up. Your job is to cause as much trouble with NATO as possible. We help you get elected the next time around. However, he didn't get elected. As soon as he didn't get elected, Putler knew that once he invaded Ukraine, it would cause nothing but problems for the Biden administration back home. And so much of this outrage has been absolutely manufactured by Russia, and it's happening to this day. The entire plan originally was to dump NATO by Trump. The trouble is he didn't get the election, and Putler had to go to plan B, and that was actually invade Ukraine.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think right now you see
That's
Donald Trump emulating Vladimir Putin, and it's not going to be as dramatic. You won't need it, But you already see him making moves through legislation that will allow him to go into Mexico and pursue these T groups that are within Mexican borders. Now, you know, I don't know how that's going to turn out if they're going to work in coordination with the Mexican authorities and they're going to actually achieve anything of benefit regarding that trade. But the fact is, the legislation is there to do it with or without the support of the Mexican government, should they want it, right? So I think you see that, and then they're going to inch closer. I think he sent a bunch of people down to the border, like a battalion. I'm not sure the numbers and the actual vernacular, but it was a group of armaments, helicopters and troops down to the Mexican border, the American Mexican border. So, I think you're going to see, some kind of something, especially with Mexico building a canal with China through it to rival the Panama Canal.
I also, when Frontline and I were having a conversation before we were planning for the show, one of the things we picked up on is a little bit of the language that's being used. Do you want to touch on that, Frontline? Like the similarities around annexing and how they used it with the
well, yeah,
Ukraine.
that's yeah. Oh, you just used the Ukraine.
Ah,
See?
shoot. That's going to take a little time for muscle memory to kick
I
in.
know.
Thanks for pointing that out.
No worries. And yeah, it did the whole like the Ukraine started because of the USSR, so it's looked by Ukrainian people as like a way to say that they're still part of the USSR. So
Fair. Yeah.
they've asked us all to please stop using the in front because we don't say the Canada, we don't say the it's like belittling them. But yeah, so that's what we were just talking about, right? It's that it's the same kind of language of telling the people we're going to annex you, we're going to annex you, we're going to annex you to normalize it.
Yeah.
Because they like obviously, I think the United States is honestly just waiting for us to have our election to see like, are they going to have puppets in charge?
Yeah.
Or are they actually going to have to fight us on some level, whether that's just economically at first or however that's going to look like in the future, we don't know. But they're going to try to undermine our government no matter what. They're going to try to undermine any sort of non-conservative government, whether that's provincial, whether that's federal. So the propaganda machine is strong. And this is actually what I forgot to say, that Adam gave Canadians a warning. This was a big one. I forgot because I didn't write it down, but I'll remember it forever. He said, you guys are in for the biggest psychological warfare you're ever going to experience. The propaganda machine from the United States is going to hit you hard, and it is going to try to undermine your democracy. Like, we think we've been hit hard already. We're going to be hit even harder. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that are going to start seeing all of these things written online. They're not going to understand, but people are gullible. Right? So if you really haven't been paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine and all of a sudden you look online and now you have all these people saying Ukraine started the war, they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know that.
Do you know like what
So
he means by it's going to get like worse, like the misinformation? Like how does it get worse?
I think
more
it's
bots, more social media influence.
more lies.
Because, for example, Mark Zuckerberg just recently took off fact checking and let people started, you can now call people in the LGBTQ community mentally ill online, and it's totally allowed. It's okay. They're not going to take that stuff off of there. So yes, it's going to get worse. We're already seeing it. We're seeing more censorship on TikTok. We're seeing more extreme right-wing accounts get pushed. Last night, I was in a Al Jazeera live just watching the news. And obviously, because I'm in a live, I see the comments. And the comments were literally like, it was just bots. Like there was a couple of real people in there and just hundreds and hundreds of bots spreading misinformation about Israel and Ukraine. They were pro-Israel and anti-Ukraine. And the comment section was going off. And so if you're a random person and you tune into that for the first time and you see these comments, you're like, what? Is there any truth to this? What's going on? Let me search on the web. And then all of a sudden, because think about it, Google is now under Trump's thumb as well, right? They took away Black History Month. They took away Pride Month. They took away the Holocaust Remembrance Day. They took away Women's History Month. So if Google, and they rechanged the name to Gulf of America.
Yep.
So if Google is now under the thumb, and they see these bots saying that, and all of a sudden somebody goes to research that on Google, is Google going to be reliable anymore in the future?
I
don't think so. I don't know.
I did a deep
Google's not
dive.
reliable.
I did a deep dive yesterday around bro boys and bots and technology and kind of basically, kind of trying to play that reverse psychology, like maybe I should get bots. How do I get bots? What do I do? How do I make money off them? And some of the conversations were like, basically, there's only actually 40% of the engagement on a TikTok channel are real. Like 40%
There you
of
go.
people on social media are real that we engage with. The
Yeah.
rest are, yeah, and that was pretty shocking. I don't know how true it was, but I mean, I saw that on quite a few. Go ahead, Damien.
I'd like to speak to a question someone asked in the chat about whether Pierre supporters are bots, and that's my
For
impression.
sure.
That's been my impression. I've like risen to my TikTok fame the last year or so, partially by bashing Pierre online, and especially when talking about the trans stuff, I got called all kind of names, PDF file and user and smoke another one is all, but they're all very repetitive. They're all very repetitive. And a lot of PR for PM, of course, right? But they're always from anonymous accounts. And eventually I realized that they aren't real people.
Correct.
And I think that's kind of one of our flaws in Canada as people is that we're nice and we're friendly and we assume the best in others. And we assume that if someone is like that, it's like, well, maybe if I just explain to them. But I really think the bots are designed to distract us, right? To get us back into that debate space, out of that space of into that space of extremes and out of the space where we can actually connect with other people. So I've stopped arguing with people who with those kind of comments or whatever, unless I can get some kind of really good dig or entertainment out of it for other people. Because it's not, I'm not, I don't believe I can convince anyone they're probably bots is what I'm trying to say.
They are bots.
Yeah. Hold on. I've done a lot of research on this. I do not believe it is 60% bots. I know I don't know how that number came to be, but it's not.
I think you should look it up
it's a
though,
much-
because we have a large amount of bots on this platform
TikTok
and
is
other
so
platforms. Large.
TikTok cares about big
They-
numbers, so they don't really mind if there's
Right.
bots in their platform,
TikTok
other
has-
than just obvious violations of their community service, or terms. But they like big numbers, so they don't mind.
TikTok has a forum or they address how to spot bots that are bot accounts on TikTok, and you can just go. They'll tell you how to spot them.
We've come to the conclusion oftentimes that on a regular day, whenever you have those kind of conversations, probably about 30-ish% of the comments, the PR for PM and all that kind of stuff are probably bots. More than likely bots. And then you mix in a couple of real people who will parrot that as well, right? So you've probably got about 45% of the comments that you will not be able to reach because probably 30 of them are bots, and then you've got a whole bunch of other people who just buy the
So
same
are
stuff
these
that the bots.
people uh, the ones that don't have profile pictures or don't show the picture on live or their face
Exactly.
on live?
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
some of them have profile pictures, but they're like it could just be pictures that they took online from wherever, right? Like anybody else's face, it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
so okay.
Yeah.
There's
So
three major characteristics that you have to look for bot accounts. So obviously, the faceless accounts are a big deal, but go to their following. If they are one follower or 10 followers and following 1,000, that's a pretty good indication that that's a new bot account, and he's just going kind of through the list and following other bot accounts. The other thing that you look for is if they have just a couple of generic videos, and they've got 4 generic videos that have like 3 million views between them, and they've got 120 followers.
yeah.
So
And if you
wouldn't
have no likes or no, but they're
okay,
following
but
large amount of people.
so wouldn't most people think I'm a bot?
I
Because
would
I can
go
see
by
your
if
the
they go
date
look
face.
they
at my
started up too.
profile, it says I'm not a content creator. I don't have likes.
I think while you show your face and
I
you've
do
been
show
in
my
lives and
face.
talk and stuff like that. So when I'm thinking about a troll myself, I'm thinking about somebody, I don't see their face. Maybe a car is their picture. Maybe they have a high amount of people they're following, high amount of friends, but or they're following a lot of people, little amount of friends, and no likes. No likes is a huge standout for me, especially if they have lots of friends that they're following and connecting. Because if you have people you're connecting with, they're going to like some of your stuff, right? So for me, that's a big
Okay,
standout.
I've never created anything.
You
I'm
could
not a content creator. I've
you
Well,
just
how are you unliking
now
though?
started to
yeah.
show my face.
You could
Yeah.
also be collateral damage in some lives too, right? You show up and people think you're a bot, and that's fine. You know what I mean? Like,
True.
because you don't
can I?
have, I don't have a lot of likes or whatever, so I don't really make content. So I'm kind of in the same boat.
Because
I
I'd
look for
like
the
not
date
to
they
be a
set up
bot.
their account too, because the date they set up their account is going to be like brand spanking new.
Okay, we're going
If
to
I
go
think
Oh,
to
we're
I gotcha.
Frontline and
Yeah,
then we're
yeah.
going to go to Happy, and I'll get you to mute your mics because we're talking over each other again. Sorry, Frontline, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to get really clear on the fact that there are bots, but then there's also paid troll accounts. Like there's people that are
True.
paid to do this. Then there's also just trolls in general, because that's just the reality of it. And usually you can tell by what kind of conversation you're having with them. You can, because if they're able to actually carry conversation, even if it's very like dismissive or if even if they're really rude to you, if they can actually continue a conversation, that's a person. With a bot, you'll be able to see a lot of the times when you ask them a certain question about something and then they repeat the exact same thing they said before, that might be a bot.
Thank you.
They're also much more prevalent on text-based platforms. So things like X is going to have a lot more bots. And there is a lot of bots and stuff on TikTok as well, don't get me wrong, but they're easier to program on something like X.
Okay.
They're evolving
Happy?
also in X.
Hey, Joe Morin, how are you? Welcome,
I'm
welcome.
good. What's up?
Love to see you. Love to hear you. Hopefully, all is well. So yeah, I think the bot thing is a great topic. I really think we should explore it deeply, publicly, like on a specific like if
Can you
frontline.
speak up a little bit, Pappy? Sorry.
Sorry, I think that perhaps the bot thing is a pretty good and relevant topic, and I really think we should commit like an entire segment to this at some point that is might be scheduled. And I think Frontline Feminist said she had, pardon me for any assumptions I make throughout the evening, just correct me whenever I do make one. So when Frontline Feminist, she's done a lot of these research, she said. So like, get her to like lead like maybe some. I'm sorry, I'm asking. Like, is that something that would be interesting? Like, we can have like a
Yeah, it
full.
would be a really good idea to do something like that. I know for when I get on my TikTok, I find when it gets a little glitchy, you know what I mean? And I start to move my scroll and it gets glitchy, glitchy, glitchy. I end up going back to who just started following me and I start thinking about, the last live I was on. And usually if I remove the first three new followers, my live stream goes back to normal. So I always find that a little interesting.
So some of the
Also, like,
bots you need to watch for. Um, like I said, the bots are kind of evolving, and it's one of the things we need to keep an eye on, especially since there's been articles that have been coming out in regards to how Elon actually used bots on X to actually affect the U.S. election, and they're predicting right now we're going to see those same bots coming into Canada to do the same thing. His are the next level. A lot of the bots you've seen before. I remember a couple of articles. I think Luc Lebrun did one uh, where he was noticing after a Pierre rally, suddenly you had like 300 or 400 tweets coming out from people all over the world saying, I was just at the Pierre Polyev rally. And it was almost the same text, just slightly changed here and there. That's kind of a simple bot in regards to this is just a mass messaging to try to control the message. The bots get also kind of the same thing in regards to what you guys are seeing here on TikTok, where it's just they're coming in, Pierre for PM, Trump for Canada, whatever the simple messaging. They come in, and you see these guys. They come in, they bomb some messages, and then they don't say anything else. You challenge them with some questions. They might do one or two responses, and that's it. They move on. But the one that scares me the most is regards to the evolving bots, which is the next one, which is going to be using AI. And I'm not saying it's going to be using AI because they did use AI with the last round with during the election. They used both Eliza as well as Grok to say messaging. This gets more concerning because now you're starting to get into the question of can you do a Turing test with a bot at this point when they are able to not just come in saying their rhetoric, but also respond and have conversation with you. If you're not too sure if you can have a conversation with an AI, go talk to ChatGPT for 5 minutes. You can have a conversation. They'll respond. They'll construct arguments. And when you have a bot that's been programmed to be able to repeat rhetoric and also argue with it, then that's suddenly game changing.
And
Because
then
now you can have
AI.
not just a single one, but you can have an army of them representing multiple accounts. And they get to control the conversation because they can now impose an echo chamber onto you.
You can have an AI create um, like a program that controls bots and just has
I I just make multiple instances of the AI,
well,
each one controlling a few accounts. It'd be
there's
much easier.
but there's a multiplier too, and it's proven that it doesn't really matter too much whether or not they're exactly replicas or not. It seems to
No,
persist. But I would assume that you could just create like what are those called? The macros? Like a macro
yep.
like
Well, that's what
one
they're doing
button.
right now is the macros, but the AIs actually add the intelligence because then they can maintain context as to what they have a conversation with you, and they're able to respond and adapt to your
Exactly.
conversation. This is, like
Wow.
I said, more complicated because as opposed to a couple of bots jumping in the chat going Pierre for PM, these ones are going to be arguing with you. And they're going to be using all the rhetoric at blinding speed. I mean, my first thing would probably be see how long it takes for them to respond. If they could respond quicker than a human, that might be a tell, but that won't be take long for them to correct.
right
Yeah, my
now,
eyes are
you
Wow.
getting
can
some
also
screen
see
views,
when they
don't I?
say a lot of the same stuff. So when you know that something's going on in the world, and then all of a sudden, whole bunch of bots come in and they draw your attention to some other topic, and you can see it. You don't always know what it's about, but
Yep.
oftentimes, like I'm in a live, and then I see all these. I'm just going to go with Pierre for PM, but it could be anything. It could be, Zelensky's a dictator. It could be any talking point, and they all say it, and then all of a sudden something else happens, and you're like, that's why. That's why
Yep.
all of these bots and all of these posts I remember at one point it was posts about how we're all going to be drafted and we're all going to be this and we're all going to be that. It was, and then something, I don't remember what it was, but something came out that it was, something that we should be looking over here, worried about this while this is happening.
It's
And
all
every time you see an overload of something, that means something else is going on. Just be in tune for that.
So we are at 7:25 and we're about to wrap it up. So what I wanted to do is kind of go through the conversation, go through, and if everybody wants to leave with some final thoughts, and I'll hit Frontline last because I think she's got a couple of really good ones. We've already talked about them. So Brother Man, thanks for joining us. Everybody, if you don't mind muting your mics while we're having these final thoughts. I know you just got here.
Yeah, it kind of sucks that I joined in on your last second, but hey, what do you do?
Sorry.
No, it's all you can do, boy. You guys are having such an interesting topic of conversation, something I really wanted to get into, but hey, there's always next week, right?
There is, unless you want to just add a few, you want to say a little bit more and then end with your final thought, and
Well,
then we'll move on to.
realistically, I think the whole aspect of the bots is going to get really scary when Elon Musk starts releasing all the robots that are also going to be repeating the exact same rhetoric. Like, you got to think that that guy is definitely going to use all those robots he's making to build his own personal army, which he can control, right? That's going to be when it gets really fucking terrifying, right? Like, as it stands now, all we got to deal with is the occasional comment on social media, which sucks. Yes, I get it. It's annoying. But when those bots actually come out as a physical form that's going to be controlled by Elon Musk, you got to realize that the United States is going to go down an even scarier hill, right? It's going to get fucking terrifying. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, that is scary.
Oh, it is. It's going to get so unbelievably terrifying.
So scary. Radical?
Well, I just want to, and I've pointed this out for quite some time, that we as a population have to understand that military force is now the absolute last option of the dictator. With social media, the social atmosphere, and the social area has become the new battlefield. And if we are not armed for this war, we are absolutely going to get swamped by it, because for the most part, even that are the people that are aware of how the platform and how the manipulation is happening, they control the narrative so much that a lot of this is just not going to get out to the average person, where they can combat and understand what it is that they're seeing on social media. And it links back to another reason that they want the government dismantled, is because the government is the only entity that can step in and actually put some control and regulation on social media.
Well said. Happy?
sorry. That's not on net there that I wasn't expecting. Um, you know, yeah, for sure. I think a lot of things seem daunting, and for a lot of people, more than challenging. It can seem like we're on the precipice of a really dark time. But we have to, like, I think we have to remember that we're more than than not. And they have every single member that they'll ever have is on their team right now, and that's it. They're not growing anything beyond what is already there. The people that are now more and more vocalizing have still been voting on that side, have still been supportive of those narratives, have still been showing up on behalf of that policy. They're just speaking more and more brazenly publicly now. And yeah, I'm not gonna talk about the minute percentage of people that they might go to, but I'm talking about us as a united front. If we collaborated, and we put pressure on politicians to collaborate, and form a unified front, at least against this conservative and right wing momentum that is kind of um, not metastasizing, but beginning to bubble, and have a joint a joint policy, so that we don't feel lost if we vote one way or another. And that way we can at least have some control of the near future.
Well said. Grandma Sandy?
This is a tough conclusion today because we talked about multiple subjects.
Multiple.
I appreciate all the answers about bots. I truly believe that we have an issue that needs to be addressed extremely seriously. And my problem right now is I agree with Frontline Feminist, but I also agree with Happy. And they have a couple different opinions in what I've heard. So the conclusion I'm making right now is I have to do a little bit more research. Maybe there's a lot more happening in the world than I realize, but globally, I think we're in trouble. So I think I have to do more research. Sorry.
That's okay. Research is important, right? Like, if you're walking away from this live inspired to do a little bit more research, that's the best thing that could happen. PG, what's your takeaway tonight?
I think one of the things, and I think I've pretty much said everything I needed to say, and I agree with pretty much everything that was said by everybody else. I think one of my takeaways is that there are things that I've been saying sort of like just in small sections of the internet, thinking to myself a few things, and I feel bad that I didn't do more in the past to bring the message out. Only because everything that I know that we had been talking about a lot, like in our own circles, we're seeing come to pass at this point, right? And again, the silent majority. And I think that there are things that we could have, and I could have done as well to maybe reach more people earlier. And I think that this is where, now we're in a dire situation where we need to reach more people faster. And we could have done that better over time.
I understand that feeling. I understand that feeling. Damien?
I've been terrified about this stuff for a while. I've been seeing this writing on the wall since 2016 and before, but it's much less terrifying to experience this terror with other folks like you. I really appreciate you allowing me to be here and speak my mind every so often and to have an opportunity to kind of be a part of this bigger movement than just myself. I also want to just say that we all know that the bot's made of silicone, but some of them are made of carbon. There are people who just follow their programming, and to me, it's more about the behavior than the actual account. I wanted to say this before, so don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the bots.
Thank you. Joe?
All right.
What are
One of
your
the things I wanted to
thoughts?
start my thoughts. One of the things I wanted to bring up was towards our grandma. Uh, Feeling overwhelmed and underinformed, where you feel that you're always trying to catch up, is actually by design. They want you to feel this way. This is one of the reasons that you've seen for the past couple of weeks just a constant inundation of additional things, of additional insanity. As many have said, you're seeing 2 or 3 things happen a day, 2 different things, just to keep you overloaded. Don't let it discourage you, because the design is to get you to disengage. Don't let it disengage you. Try to filter a lot of it out. Focus on a couple of things. That's all you can do. Don't try to be a hero and be everything. The other thing that was also was from Frontline, which had to do about building communities. I think Adam Kinzinger is absolutely right. It's the most important thing that we need to do now on top of everything else. Being aware and staying aware of everything else. We need to build those communities now because they're going to keep us aware, safe, and keep a watch on everybody else. But more importantly, what groups and communities you can build now can easily change to whatever needs to be adapted should things change in the future. And let's be honest here, we're all feeling it's going to change and the demands are going to change in the future. And it's a lot easier to flip something from a community than try to build a cell right from the scratch. Once you got people organized, you can easily redirect them to do something else if you need to as things change. That's it.
Wow, that was really well said. Frontline?
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add, just because if I start talking about what's going on in Europe, which I really wanted to focus on in this live, but we just didn't get there.
I left a lot of room. We have time for that.
But it is going to start another major discussion. Otherwise, I'm the only one speaking, and then there's no point for an open panel if I'm the only one speaking. So we can leave that for another day, because it's a big topic to cover, and I don't want to rush through it.
What's going on in Europe?
Everything.
What isn't going on?
Yeah, sure. But what?
European nations having to come together to support Ukraine. The fact that they're having a hard time actually uniting right now because they're all very different. They all have their own ways of doing things. And so they're actually kind of weak.
Yeah.
Because they're not willing to unite properly. Right. You also have right-wing governments that are fighting for power. Italy already has. Elections are coming up in Germany this weekend. JD Vance is meddling with Romanian politics. So there might be a chance that we're going to get a Putin puppet in my country back home.
Is Romania right-wing prior to any kind? Are they just pillow buddies? Are they friends? Normally, is Romania right wing?
Romania is part of NATO. So Romania has gone up and down, but they mostly stick to very centrist politicians. But they're corrupt. There's a lot of corruption in my country's politics, and that's why it was a good opportunity for Putin to place a puppet in there, because people are disillusioned by. People are disillusioned by how our government has handled things. But at the end of the day, this is one of the perfect times to do it, because after COVID, all countries really suffered. So that's why you're seeing this increase in right-wing governments all over the place, is because COVID was used as the perfect tool to get people to be very skeptical of their governments, right? Because economy tanked for a lot of countries, and Romania's economy was already doing really badly. We have one of the poorest economies in Europe. So you add a pandemic on top of that, and it's a disaster. However, with that Putin puppet that almost got power, the only people that voted for him were the only people that knew him. The most Googled phrase in my country the day after the elections was, who is Georges Carlin, which is the guy that was placed in there, wanted to be placed in there by the Russian government. So it's completely divided my country, divided everybody there, because, as I said, the people that didn't vote for him didn't even know who he was, because he came up as an independent with no real party.
Wow.
But yeah, the discussion would have gone on to talk about, what does this mean?
That was my next question.
Because what this means is, I genuinely believe that there is how do I say this in a way that doesn't sound like a conspiracy, because it's not, but we're seeing it happen. But the multipolar world, if you guys listen to Canadian Resistors, he's talked about it quite a bit too. But the plan is and has been for a long time. And if you read through the translations of the Russia Project, which was written from 2005 to 2010, the end goal for Russia is to own as much of Europe as humanly possible. And so this whole plan of having a guy like Trump in charge is a really good thing for Russia. It's very good for them, because they basically said, well, we're not going to react to Article 5. United States says that if any country in NATO gets attacked by Russia, they're not jumping in to help, which means that it's all up to Europe now.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely up to them, right? So they're trying to increase military spending, but that's the thing. They have to come together. The only way they can do this is if they come together, and they're having a hard time coming together right now. There's a lot of individual ideologies and politics in Europe, and if they don't get their shit together, excuse my expression, but if they don't get it together, they're in for a lot of destruction in the near future. Then
Germany said they would support Canada, right? Germany they just had a meeting and they said they would have Canada's back. So what does that mean? Will the rest of the European Union?
Well, this is where I'm going to get to. This is the problem, because if, say, Russia invades at the same time that the U.S. wants to invade, they can't help each other.
That's right.
So if you weaken Europe, right, then Europe won't be able to jump in and help us. If you weaken us, we won't be able to go help them. And that's what this whole plan is about: weakening Europe, weakening Canada, weakening Mexico. And if they're able to do that, then they can just walk in and take over.
Who comes in and saves the day for pretty much everybody would, I think, ironically be China.
No,
Crazy.
They have their own agenda.
So
I know they have their own
agenda. China is not loyal to anyone.
No one, yeah.
First of all,
I know that, but
China is the strategic player that does not show their cards and will only pick loyalty to whoever is winning.
I think
so. If we're smart,
okay. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead. If we're smart,
if we're smart and we create good trade deals with China, and Europe is smart and creates good trade deals with China, and then they can also unite and be strong against Russia, China will take our side. Right. But if they see that we're losing and we're weak, they'll take Russia's side. That's just the way that China works. And China is never going to show the world what their cards really are. They're never going to show the world how strong they actually are, how advanced they actually are. But I have no doubt in my mind that over the next 2 decades, if we survive what's coming, China will be the next world superpower. I mean, they already are. Sure. They're just not talking about it.
How do you know that they'll stand with the fascists? They're communists, or they're socialists at least. How do you know they'll stand with the fascists?
China's a capitalist country masquerading as a communist. They're like an oligarchy. But like, do you think that Japan having a trade deal, like a big trade deal with the United States, would like kind of make China want to make a deal with, people who are on the quote unquote outs with the USA?
I mean, we're already in talks right now of doing a trade deal with China.
Free trade, yeah.
Yeah.
You think though, like China still harbors resentment. Like if you speak to mainland China, they still harbor resentment for Japanese internment camps and how they were treated during that period of time. I could see, I don't know, the enemy of my enemy becoming my friend. And China's going to be handcuffed anyways because they have to deal with India and Pakistan and the Kashmiri province up there in the mountain range, right? But anyways, I agree with you. Those are amazing topics. I'd love to pick your brain. I'm reading.
Yeah, for sure.
You just talked about. I'm reading about it, like trying to digest it.
Yeah, well, that's what we have to watch out for, and that's kind of the biggest issue that we're facing right now is that Europe is not uniting properly.
Well,
And without their unification, we're all in trouble.
so if China only supports the side that's winning, and we're doing trade deals with them right now, you're saying that we're winning?
No, China thinks they're winning. Like China is winning.
China doesn't care right now. If they can get cheaper resources from us, they're going to do it. All
But
I'm
they
saying
don't
is
do that.
China
China,
does what
that's not what
benefits
China does, though.
China.
China buys raw resources at like at a huge discount. Like they do they.
Well, they look to eliminate the tariffs, right? Like, so Chinese trade
Mhm.
deals right now that we're trying to do with, sorry, Canada China trade deals right now are based around eliminating tariffs and creating a free trade in economy, right? Like, that's the big thing right now. And same with India, similar to what we did with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which sucks for a lot of people, but ends up right now working in our benefit.
I also want to say that like war is generally bad for business. So I'm not so sure that China would necessarily want to side with the warmongers. Maybe if we're like losing or something, but I think
Well,
they see the wisdom in not going to war and just dominating economically. That's what China wants. They don't want to
I
go to
I
war.
wasn't I wasn't talking that China's ever going to go to war. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about who they're going to side with economically because they're going to stay out of it. If it doesn't involve them, they're not going to ever put troops on the ground to help somebody else. What I'm saying is winners or losers in terms of who wins that war and who becomes more economically stable after.
mm, mm,
Because they're gonna do, as I said, they're gonna do what's best for them. China's not gonna pick a side in a war that doesn't
I think
involve
if they
them.
see one of their rivals,
They're not like that.
I I think they're going to more or less than their rivals, right? Like than anything like that. They're going to decide where their resources are cemented. Like, so if they have massive investment in Canada, and then all of a sudden Russia's trying to come over and intervene, that's not going to go over well with China. And so, like, if China has like the same things that Russia is trying to invade us for, and there's an investment there, or there's a trade partnership, I think they would look to protect that. To what extent, I don't know. Nor do I actually disagree with you fully, but I just think that you could protect your investment.
Yeah, as I said, it has to benefit them in one way or another, and they're going to be very strategic about it. It's definitely not them jumping in the beginning, right? If they're going to support, they're probably going to support with financial help when they see that, like, hey, this is a side that has more to offer us if they win, and they actually have a chance of winning, right? If they look at the situation and go, there's no chance of winning here, if they lose, they could be taken over by this country, and then this country would have access to all their resources. Then they're going to side with that country that is going to be able to give them access to those resources. So they're just going to play it very strategically. All I'm saying is that they are the most strategic country on this globe, in my perspective. They've always been that way. They have a ton of secrets, a lot of things we don't know about. We don't know how strong they are. We don't even fully understand all their technology yet. These guys are only loyal to themselves.
I agree
I
with
think
If you
it's
say
Frontline
so, it
Promise.
just sounds really weird. I don't know. I don't. Just it tweaks me the wrong way, but I can't really explain it.
I think it says a lot that there's North Korean troops in Ukraine, but not Chinese troops.
Right. I agree with Radical and Frontline
Well, we're not.
because I
Sorry.
do believe China keeps close to their chest. They're not going to give us their information. If they don't have a play in what's happening at the moment, they're going to hold their cards until they know where's the best bet. What's wrong with that? I mean, if I had that kind of power in a country, why wouldn't I do that? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's the position that they choose. And We have to respect that. And we have to build our own selves up. And we have to remember that all countries aren't going to side with us. China may, they may not. But we can't count on them as an ally. It's all I'm saying. And I'm sorry, Happy, but I honestly could not hear you. I was trying very hard, but I couldn't hear what you were saying.
Okay. Thank you for saying that. Did you know Greenland's got their elections coming up on March 11th?
Oh, wow.
Their parliamentary elections. If you go to europeelects.eu and then it takes you to the calendar, you can see who, like Switzerland has like 3 elections this year. You know, there's like so many countries right now in Europe, European Union, going through Finland, Switzerland, Romania, obviously.
Holy Game of Thrones.
Like the whole like area, and then Russia. Like,
Wild.
there are so many elections this year. That's crazy talk.
Frontline, do you have anything to add for the end of this conversation?
Not necessarily. I'm just trying to read through some of the comments here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I, made you feel uncomfortable, Damien, and that was not my end goal. I'm just talking about what I know from learning about geopolitics throughout my life and learning about how different countries operate. That's it. So sorry if that
Oh, no,
bothered
no, no.
you.
You didn't hurt my feelings. I'm just expressing how I feel. I'm not saying that you didn't make me feel that way. I feel that way.
Okay, sorry. Either way, it's a Canadian way of. I'm just gonna say sorry.
Well, I know that we can have these discussions and talk about it, and I like being challenged on my ideas and that we can kind of stir this pot. So, yeah, and I could be wrong. I think maybe I'm just
And
optimistic about
do you
China.
mind though if I ask you like what's your perspective on it? Like,
Well,
what's
my
your
perspective.
perspective on China?
Well, I guess I would say that they probably would lean away from the warmongering fascists because fascism is not just like bad because they do bad things. It's also just a self-consuming ideology and leadership style. How many other? I mean, how many successful fascist countries are there around the world? Not a whole lot, if any. So I'm sort of thinking that China wanting that economic dominance would not go for the country that's going to do that kind of thing, unless maybe as a last resort if there's nobody else. But like, yeah, I don't know. So I guess I'm a little more optimistic, or maybe I just don't want to be as terrified. I don't know.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing.
What was that, Happy?
We tied it up. It's 2-2 in 6 minutes left in the second period.
Oh, they tied it up.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Go Canada,
And
go.
scored. Yeah.
That's some good news. We need good news. We
You
need
know,
a
I'm
little.
going to end off with saying one thing from reading people go back and forth in the comments. This is like, we hear this from both sides when people are like, the other side is crazy. They're all about their feelings over the facts. And like each side believes that they're the ones that believe in facts. And I don't know how we solve this. I genuinely don't know how we solve this because we've created a culture where everything is a fact nowadays. Like if you see a documentary, it must be factual, and it's obviously not the case, but that's what people believe, right? I mean, we've been fed so many lies over the last 2 decades, realistically, more in the last decade, but we've been fed so many lies that nobody knows how to discern between fact and fiction anymore.
And feelings.
Because you can go research anything and you can have your bias what's it called? You can have your bias confirmed anywhere you go, but is some deep dark website gonna be factual? Probably not, but you can find it and therefore think in your head that you're the one that believes in facts. So I don't know how we solve this, right? This is just something that I've been thinking about nonstop for a decade straight, to be honest, especially because I come from an industry where conspiracy theories are very popular, right? That's why I left all my old jobs behind. But this is a massive issue going forward, and if we don't figure out a way to fix this issue, we're doomed.
I think you're right there with CIA and CSIS trying to figure out try to figure this out. You know, like it's not just you; it's everybody. You're not crazy. You know, like it's definitely a daunting task.
Right? Like CSIS told us that in the interference report. There was like 200 pages out of that report that were about the fact that misinformation is the biggest threat to our freedom, to our sovereignty, to our democracy. It's the biggest threat that we face on this planet right now is misinformation. And nobody knows how to fix it, because the second you tell someone that they can't post whatever they want to post, people freak out and they go, "Oh, you're a dictator. You're going against free speech." And like, this is why nothing got done. This is why we are where we are, because these people were allowed to say whatever they want.
I spend a lot of time thinking about these things too, and one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is we're so caught up on this, his side, your side, which side, and it's not about the right and the left. We're stuck in this right and the left scam, but the truth of the matter is it's the ultimate richest people in the world attacking the poorest and trying to erase the middle class. So anybody that wants to argue, they're going to be just as affected as you are and I are. They're not in that space. They might be trying to elevate themselves to a different space or thinking they can evade it in some way. But we're all facing the same thing. There's maybe like 10 to 20 people in the world that will not be facing the same things that we are all facing.
Okay, there are right fighters, okay? People that will never stop fighting to be right. Then there are other people that will go deeper than their bias research to see another side. And those are the people we count on, because they're more interested in not being right fighters and being open to all peoples. Those are the people that change the world, not the right fighters. And there's a lot of us that are out there to fight for what we think is equal to all, not just certain group.
You're right. Brother man, why don't you chime in here?
We also got to start teaching a lot of our society that it could also be a really beautiful thing when you find out that you're actually wrong, right? Like there's this huge overwhelming urge in society that being wrong is this, horrible thing when it's not, right? Like the best situations, the most I've ever learned in my life is when I've been proven wrong, right? And you got to start teaching more people that when they're proven wrong, it's not a bad thing, right? So, the more you teach people that it's a good thing to be wrong, the more positive we could get out of it, right? This is my opinion anyways.
Absolutely.
Can you
I love that.
Can you say Dave's not here, man?
Dave's not here, man. Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you.
To follow what Happy said, maybe we could focus less on the facts and about what's right and arguments and reason and all this, and maybe just focus on community and love. And I'm not saying we can love the fascists to death or something, but what I'm saying is maybe I think that's maybe why people are so in their camps, because they feel like they won't have anyone else to turn to if that group rejects them. And because we're so polarized, it is kind of like that. I mean, a lot, right? Like I mean, I guess it's partially like the social justice movements of the last few decades. We sort of not sort of took advantage of the fact that we live as who said it, that we live in a democracy. We're kind of spoiled. So we sort of like had all this rhetoric, and we felt okay like disposing people like you do when you swipe left on Tinder. And people aren't disposable, despite what we may think, and humans aren't disposable, and people can change. I know it's hard to, people seem stubborn and stuck in their ways, but maybe there's something under there. It's not about being right or about them winning. Maybe it's more about feeling connected to humanity. Maybe that's where we should focus our energy.
And on that note, I think I have to look at ending Beaver politics tonight. Is there anybody that wants to chime in for one final thought? I
I
know
just want to
Happy
say
had
thanks
his.
for letting me join in. It's always been a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. Happy, you wanted to say something?
No,
No?
thank you very much. Good night, everybody. Have a nice evening. We'll talk to you later. And great
Be
debate.
safe.
Provoking, evoking.
I just want to go through the list of all the other shows we have during the week
That,
before we go.
thank you.
So Monday night, everybody, Indigenous Matters, same time as Truth Through Discourse. That's going to be hosted by Treaty Birder, and it's going to talk about the effects of politics on Indigenous communities and how Indigenous people can affect the political structure. Tuesday, we're going to have News Hour with me, where I'm going to be highlighting the biggest news from the weekend or news that you might have been missing and just bring things up to the forefront, and then open up the panel for a quick 1 hour discussion after I'm done speaking. Wednesday, we have the Mossy Side with the Progressive Moose, where he's going to talk about the messy side of politics, and he goes and does deep dives into weekly topics. Thursday, we have 2 shows. We have the Navigation Station, which is hosted by the Missus, which is before this one, and it's all about education, resources, and solutions that we can help people navigate the political landscape a little bit better. Thursday, we have this, as you can obviously tell. Friday, we have 2 shows. The first one is hosted by Pixie Lee, and it's called Canadian History with a Purple Crayon, which is all about Canadian history prior to Canada, with a focus on BIPOC perspectives. And then in the evening, we have Polititalk, hosted by Nerdy, which is, again, the debate live that can go on for 6 hours. So jump into that, because it's kind of an all-night thing, and we have friendlies and we have opposition on the panel. So it's a good way for us to all talk to each other. Saturday, we have Breaking the Dam, which is hosted by Jana, and this is all about mental health, right? It's a safe space for talking about your mental health during tough times, learning new coping skills, increasing mental health awareness, and fighting stigmas. Then in the evening, at the same time as this, we have Radicalized, hosted by Radical down here at the bottom. You can give us a little wave. And he's going to be talking about kind of like the gray matter of politics and how religion is impacting the political atmosphere. And then Sunday, our new show with Happy, A Damn Happy Life, where he's going to be talking about looking for a deeper perspective on how people define happiness and exploring the moments of growth throughout our lives.
Is there some place we can find this information if you're like me and forgot everything you just said? I have
I'm
ADHD, I'm
thinking,
sorry. But like,
I think I'm going to post it on Beaver Politics. Yeah.
because that was a
It,
lot,
it,
and it
But
sounds like a lot of
yeah,
good stuff, but I didn't recall, I didn't memorize any of the times or days.
it
So
should be on our Beaver Politics page as a video. It
okay,
should be a
okay,
video that
hopefully it's
outlines
pinned.
all the different shows.
wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll let the tech people know to pin it.
We will. And thank you all for coming tonight. Go be safe. Oh, Beavers pin it.
Thanks for the 50K, everybody. Fantastic job. Fantastic live. Fantastic topics.
Go be safe. Have a good night. Thank you.
Just wanted to thank
Okay.
everybody that's tuned in. Yeah, just wanted to thank everybody that's tuned in. Wanted to thank everybody on the panel. I'll, of course, be there at 6 o'clock Mountain Time on Saturday for Radicalized. But I really just want to point out to everybody that's joined in on the program here, maybe if you're a first time watcher, that Beaver politics is all about offering different opinions, but allowing the discourse of those different opinions. And our platform is really about allowing everybody and giving everybody an actual turn to speak without being interrupted and to get their viewpoint out and feel like they have actually been heard. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and
Just
we'll
one
see you
last
tomorrow,
question.
and we'll see you on
What time
Saturday.
on Saturday will that show start on mental health?
11 a.m. Pacific
Which
time. So
are we talking the morning show or my show?
we're
That's a
talking the
talk
Sorry,
show.
Jenna
Go.
show.
Frontline's got it radical. Go ahead, Frontline.
So it's Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great evening. Thanks.
Good night.
Go be radical.
Good night, everybody.